Well, good Friday morning, New Heart Church family. Pastor Matt with you. I know I missed yesterday. I apologize. Had a lot of things on my plate yesterday. I went to go see Pastor Todd, and he's going to be discharged today. So we're grateful for God's healing touch upon him through that surgery. And I had a couple of things to do yesterday, so I didn't get to this, but I'm here today. Okay, I hope that's good enough. Have you ever heard of the man named Norman Cousins? He was a writer for the Saturday Evening Review magazine for many, many years. Back in the 1960s, he was diagnosed with a terminal illness, and the doctors told him that there was no hope. But Cousins had read a few things somewhere and decided he was going to treat himself. And what he did was he went home and loaded up his old-time film projector with a whole bunch of Three Stooges shorts, with movies featuring Abbott and Costello, featuring the Marx Brothers, featuring all the comedians he could find. And he watched those movies, and he laughed his head off. He found out that if he did belly laughs for about 10 seconds, he'd be pain-free for about 2 hours. So he kept watching all these movies and kept laughing these belly laughs. And when he went back to the doctor, they told him he had been cured. So for the rest of his life, Norman Cousins wrote articles about laugh therapy and how to be a more joyful person. You know, that's what Paul writes about in just about every letter that he wrote in the New Testament, but it's specifically in the book of Philippians where he talks about being joyful. In fact, he says in Philippians 1:4, he says, "In all my prayers for all of you, I always pray with joy because of your partnership in the gospel." It never fails, he says, to make me smile, to know that you know Jesus Christ. No one in the world can take away the joy I have because of you. Paul tells us how we can be more joyful in that book. If you read through that first chapter, you realize he says that he has a positive attitude about the gospel message. In fact, he says, at one point he says, I could get really upset over the fact that I'm in prison. I could get upset because there's a whole lot of jealousy and fighting going on in the church. People are preaching the gospel for, in many cases, the wrong reasons. He says, but I get encouraged because I know that despite all that, the gospel of Jesus Christ still is being preached, and lives are still being changed for the better. People are getting saved, and that fills me with joy. That was Paul's attitude. Instead of living under his circumstances, he lived above them. He chose to focus on the power of Jesus Christ to change lives. Rather than looking at all of the terrible things that were going on, he looked at the things that he knew that were going to be great. One great author was a woman named Barbara Johnson. She wrote a book called Stick a Geranium in Your Hat and Be Happy. The book's very funny, but her life is not funny at all. Her husband was killed in a terrible car accident. She had one son that was killed in the Vietnam War, and a second son that was coming home to give her some kind of good news from living in Canada, and was in a terrible automobile accident on that way home. He never made it to tell her what that good news was. That was when Barbara started getting mad at God. And she railed against God. She said, why does this all have to happen to my family? Was it enough that you took my husband? Was it enough that you took my son, Steve? Why did you have to take my other son? How unfair you are, how cruel. And she grieved and fumed for a long time. But then she wrote in another book called Splashes of Joy in the Cesspools of Life, she wrote this. She said, was I mad at God? Yes, I was. But lying deep beneath all those feelings was my faith that God doesn't make a mistake. He never has to say, oops. God didn't cause the drunk driver to cross the center lane and run into my son. Despite all my questions and bitter grief, I knew deep down that nothing that ever happens to us is anything that God doesn't already know about. And God still loves us. He will be there for us in our grief and in our pain and in our anger. And she wrote, I found myself thanking God that he took Tim at a time when he was closer to God than he had ever been the rest of his life. Eventually, Barbara Johnson worked through her grief and found joy in the Lord, and until her death in 2007, she traveled all over the world encouraging women and anyone else to focus on the positive things of God. And that's what the Bible teaches, right? That's what Paul writes in Philippians 4:8. He says, finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely or admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about those things. Focus our thoughts on the things of God. That way we too can reclaim our joy and move on with our lives. I trust today that you are finding things to be joyful about. And even if you're going through difficult times and trials, let me tell you, God's right there beside you. And that is something that can give you joy. Hope to see you Sunday morning in the building for church. I start my new series, You Asked For It. And so it'll be kind of interesting to do. If you can't be with us in the building, don't forget we have Zoom Sunday School class, and we also have YouTube live presentation of our service on Sunday morning. If you need links to either one of those, just send us an email at newheartnazarene@gmail.com, and we'll get that to you. God bless you. Have a great day today. Look forward to seeing you on Sunday, and look forward to talking to you again real soon. Bye.